Seth Meyers joins us to talk about Lobby Baby on Netflix, as well as his ongoing NBC show, Late Night with Seth Meyers. Seth, I was just watching your clip from a few weeks ago. 1,000 episodes just celebrated. And you got just a tiny bit emotional talking about that.
Oh, I don't know. Did I really? I think we're all a little bit emotional because of these crazy times we're living through. I certainly, one, never thought I'd do a talk show for 1,000 episodes. Two, I didn't ever think that the 1,000th episode would be in an attic. So there's a lot going on, Chris. There's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, none of us thought any of this would be. I like that you mentioned Mike mentioned way back in March you ought to get an air conditioner, and
yeah,
when it gets hot in June, and you said June.
Yep, I did not plan that far in advance. I mean, we left, like a lot of shows. We left quickly on a Thursday, March 12th. Had to cancel guests and just assumed maybe we'd be back in 2 weeks, and now here we are. Obviously in the middle of the summer, and I personally, for our show, we don't have any timeline for when we're going to be back in the studio.
What do you miss most about being in the office and in the studio?
I like those moments in between when you're working where you get to, not collaborate, but just have conversations with the people we're lucky enough to work with. It's a really fun group of people, and I'm not going to say that when we talk, genius always comes from the conversations, but it's a nice way to percolate ideas in those moments in between. Now, obviously, like a lot of places, you have to be really efficient with your time because a lot of people on the staff are also, certainly in the spring, we're homeschooling. They had a lot of balls to juggle, and so you were trying to be really respectful of their time, whereas in the office, there's no respect for anyone's time.
When you first started shooting from home, how long did you feel like it took to get your footing, to get comfortable with it and feel like you knew what you were doing?
I mean, the biggest hurdle for me personally to get over was just, how all of a sudden you're in charge of all the tech and making sure you sound okay and it looks all right, and trying to pick the right corner of the house to do it in that's going to be quiet enough and not that intrusive on the rest of your family. As far as the writing staff, they really adapted quickly, and, I'm very much in their debt. They did not have to spend weeks figuring out how to write for the attic because they just wrote the same quality jokes, and those are fun to deliver anywhere. And then the other thing was just figuring out the pace of the show without an audience to, fill the silences. Ultimately, I think I'm lucky because my delivery is pretty fast to begin with, and we just took out all the pauses and probably are getting a full 5 more minutes of material into each show based on how fast I talk without an audience slowing me down.
What's a typical day like on a home show?
We start with waking up and having the first draft of a Closer Look, which was written the night before, sometimes maybe even finished a few hours before I wake up with my kids at 6:30 in the morning. That's written by Sal Gentile. And then I find time to take a pass at that. And then we do a Closer Look meeting where we're all on a Zoom call. It's about a 7-headed Zoom call where we're just reading through one last time, looking for a few more places to add jokes and make cuts. And then the reality of it is I have to do everything a little bit earlier just out of necessity of getting things uploaded to the network. Not necessarily to the network, but getting it uploaded to the editors who then have to upload it to the network. And a lot of people, working out of their apartments, not maybe the fastest internet that they'd want for these sort of jobs. So I'm recording a Closer Look maybe at around 12:31. At around 1:30, I try to bang out the monologue. And then I start doing Zoom interviews at around 2 in the afternoon.
And guests, when you have your guests on your show, has there been one particular one since you've been at home that really jumps out at you when I ask that question?
I think it's always what will be most memorable is just those early weeks where nobody knew what we were doing. And I was very lucky in those weeks to have people like John Mulaney and Billy Eichner, the kind of people you want to talk to in both good times and bad. And then, the week after, the George Floyd murder, a lot of people, understandably so, didn't want to promote their projects and were from a place of compassion backing out of doing shows like mine. And we were really lucky that we were able to get friends of ours like Michael Che and Leslie Jones, who could really speak to the moment far better than I could. And again, they have my gratitude for that.
Well, let me tell you something. I don't know how closely you follow reviews, but of all of the late night shows, your show has gotten the most enthusiastic, positive reviews about how you've handled the transfer and the shows you've been producing.
That's very, very nice to hear. I do, we were talking before we started that we have, not on Zoom, but we have spoken like this before over computers. So you're an old hand at this. Not being an old hand at this, early on, these were not the kindest reviews, but they were constructive criticism. A few YouTubers were critical of the way I was going about my show. And I reached out to one of them who was incredibly helpful. And so if you think, I know you don't think it's studio quality, but if you do think it's better, it is not because of me. It's because of helpful people online.
Yeah, this is our 5th time together, other than red carpets.
There we
but
go.
normally the last 3 years we've been in a hotel together, which is not to say that, it was not what I'm, that's not what
Yeah,
exactly
it was all above board. We weren't, there were other people there.
Conference rooms.
Conference rooms. There's you get a real terry cloth robe vibe now when you say stuff like that. I should also note, because we're on hiatus, I'm in my wife's childhood bedroom, and these are original works of art by my mother-in-law that are not for sale, because I'm assuming a lot of people have been distracted by the quality of the art behind me.
eBay.
I just wanted to know, again, these are priceless and not available.
What have the kids thought about you being home more and being around more?
I mean, they love that I'm around more. I do think they're going to have some questions when life goes back to normal a little bit more as to why, after proving I can do the show in the house, I have to go back to the studio and, tape a lot later at night, in the city because of our 6:30 taping and because of the age of my kids, I don't see them at night. Whereas now I'm done 4:30. It's weird to talk about the silver linings of a time like this, but I'm seeing my children a lot more. They have made some cameo appearances. It has definitely gone to their heads. They're impossible to be around. They're wondering when they're going to start getting residuals. I don't know who taught them that word. Back end keeps coming up at the dinner table.
You're teaching them well on the front end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they funny? Are they funny like you and your brother, or are they different?
The 2-year-old, I feel like it's a tick before we know. The 4-year-old is genuinely funny. Again, like a lot of humor comes from things they say that they've heard. So they're using a very adult syntax with a child's voice. So I can't tell if that's a real sense of humor yet or if he's just lucking into it. But I will say that both of them are good company.
Wanted to talk a little bit more about this last season on Late Night. I was rewatching a bunch of the clips last night. Let's talk through a couple of them. I loved your Rihanna day drinking from last summer. That was before all this happened this spring.
I know.
Tell me about that one and how that came together.
Well, Jeremiah Silva, who's our music booker, he had been playing the long game on that, and basically for a matter of years saying he really thought that she would do it. And so it was sort of the mountain that none of us ever thought we would get to the top of. But she agreed to do it, and I had only really interacted with her in very small doses as a musical guest on SNL, only to say you were great tonight, in those awkward SNL moments on the stage. So I did not know her, the day drinkings are always fun because people show up and they're very game, but no one was more game than Rihanna, and no one left having completely entranced every member of the crew. And I should note, I think we had double crew for that day. A lot of people not doing anything who just wanted to work with hopes of seeing Rihanna in person.
You had no trouble getting people lined up to work that day?
No, everybody was available, showed up early, went home late.
You and Bernie Sanders have such a good rapport on camera, whether it's home or away or in the studio. Tell
Yeah.
me about just you and he getting together.
We had him very early on in 2016. Maybe we were the first late night show that had him. And I've always enjoyed Bernie because as politicians on late night shows, and this is true of Republicans and Democrats, this is a nonpartisan observation. A lot of times they will talk in circles. And Bernie talks very directly. He answers questions very concisely, and that gives you more time to ask more and get more information. And he's exactly as gruff backstage as he is on stage. And so it's really only in the moments at the end where he has something along the lines of, "This is fun. I'm glad I was here," that you think, well, maybe he did enjoy it.
He definitely is Larry David, or vice versa.
There's a similar thread runs between them for sure.
Of course, your closer looks and a lot of your segments have to do with Trump. What do you think is going to happen here in, say, September, October, early November, as we get closer to the election?
Well, it should be noted that I'm not on a winning streak as far as predicting what's going to happen in these things. Definitely 0 for my last one in guessing presidential election outcomes. My fear is that things are going to get really ugly, and there's no reason to think that our president won't become more grotesque in his choice of language or topics to bring to the forefront. Whereas I have some guarded optimism about November, I have very little optimism as far as the level of discourse we will see from the party in power.
Those 3 debates should be quite interesting, though.
I tell you, I mean, what a thing that's going to be.
I hope you'll think about doing some live shows after those.
I mean, it would be great. I mean, I think especially, who knows where we'll be, but there's no reason not to do a live show at home. And that would be, again, like I think one of the things about doing these remote shows is you don't want to get too comfortable doing a show in a place that you never wanted to do a show to begin with. So coming up with new ways to challenge ourselves, things like live shows are what we're looking for, because the last thing we want to say is, you know what, we really got it on lockdown in the old attic.
You are the reigning champ at the Critics' Choice Awards for Best Talk Show.
Thank you.
What was that experience like, and what did that mean to you?
It was great. Obviously it was in LA, and we were only because of the length of travel and when it ended up on the calendar. There was talk about maybe skipping flying all the way out there, and instead we made the choice to go out with our incredible producers. And I should note, like, our show, we've been really lucky to be nominated as a writing staff a bunch of times, and that means the world to us because I value writing on the show a great deal. It's part of the show I'm proudest of. But our producers have never been nominated for an Emmy, and so we decided to fly it out as a group. And it was it's great when you realize how soon after that people stopped traveling for anything. So it was nice to get a trip in before that, and it was just really fun. It's genuinely exciting when they call your name and you genuinely can't believe it. And it was particularly fun to do it in a room like that, which is, all genres of television. And you just look out and you see so many people who've been kind enough to come on your show over the years. And the night was fun even before the awards, because you get to say hello to so many people. So it was a really, even though we then had to go straight to the airport to get on a red eye back home, it was a trip that was well worth it. And it was a real cool honor to share the award with James Corden and all the people who work over there.
And now you're sounding like a politician.
No, very, yeah. And the sharing. No, but it was nice, and it was a bit of good fortune that just randomly the night before, James and his wife were at the same restaurant as us, and ultimately, especially with the LA host, you don't get to see him that often. So that was nice to see him both then and then to share the award.
Well, you and your writing team have had 3 nominations in a row. We'd love to see you get into that Best Variety Talk Series category. 24 nominations in your career, and that's just in the last 12 years. So you average about 2 a year.
About two a year. Yeah. It's yeah, I mean, it's, you know, obviously you don't that's beyond where I ever thought I'd be as far as total nominations, so that's a nice
I mean, there
number.
aren't that many people that have had 24 Emmy nominations in their career.
uh yeah, it helps to be in those it helps to be on those SNL writing staffs. It's a nice place to get started.
What do you
Get your
recall about
starter nomination.
that first nomination, which was for SNL writing? What do you recall from
I
that night?
recall that you know, what was really cool was SNL had not been nominated for a few years in that category, and because of that, you know, I think Lauren was genuinely happy about it, and this will come as no surprise. Like, Lauren can get a little desensitized to awards and accolades, but I think a lot like myself, he started as a writer, identifies as a writer, and so I think the years where SNL wasn't getting nominated for a writing Emmy were, you know, he was a little upset about that, and so he doesn't ever get happy. He just stops being upset. And to be the head writer at a time when Lauren stopped being upset was one of my great accomplishments.
Well, one of your projects that might bring you an Emmy nomination or two this year is Lobby Baby on Netflix. We were looking over that list. There's so many good variety specials this past year.
I know. I mean,
yours is one of the best.
Oh, that's so kind. But you know, mostly, and one of the reasons I did it is just to see your name next to all the people that did stand-up specials this year is really cool. And you know, I think we're living in a real golden / boom era of great stand-up specials. So it was fun to do one, and hopefully people enjoyed it. And really, that would be, you know, that would be a nomination for my wife, because if you've watched that special, you know there's very little material if it's not for my wife and where she decides to have our children.
We've never talked about your Grammy nomination before, which I think it's so cool that you have one. Now,
I have a Grammy? I don't think I do. I think that's false information.
Is that right?
Yeah. If I have a Grammy nomination and don't know, I feel like that's a great insult to the...
I forget the name of the, I'm assuming it was probably a spoken word or comedy album, but it says you shared it with Carol Burnett, Amy Poehler, Kathleen Turner, Patrick Stewart, and Michael Schur. Now, that's a party.
I wonder if that is for Amy Poehler's book on tape. Is that possible?
It could be. You didn't get a certificate in the mail?
I didn't get a certificate. Feel free to cut around this.
Okay.
It turns out that we don't know what we're talking about.
No, I want people to know that I can be wrong every now and then.
Well,
that's on your IMDb page, and I knew we'd never talked about it.
We certainly haven't.
One last thing I was going to ask you about. Actually, I'm going to give you an idea, and you can think about it, and you can do it or not do it. But it's a year. You got a year and a half to think about it. February 2022, so a year and a half from now, is the 40th anniversary of Late Night. I would love to see a show either in prime time or your slot with you, Dave, Conan, and Jimmy to celebrate that, because the four of you, to my knowledge, have never been together before.
No, it's you know, the first box I'd love to tick there is having Conan on the show. You know, obviously Jimmy's been on the show, and we were really thrilled to have David on the show. But yeah, I mean, it would be amazing to be in the same place as those three guys. I mean, the closest for me that would be was at the SNL 40th when I was lucky enough to stand with Norm and Colin and Kevin Nealon. Because again, especially when you're the last of the four, it's impossible not to have been influenced by the three ahead of you. So it's you know, it's a better moment for me than it would be for them, but which is
I don't know. I think all of you would have a good time. And just for reference point, because I'm such a nerd on TV stuff and TV history, around 86 range, NBC did a 60th anniversary party long before you were there. And that was the only time ever Johnny Carson, Steve Allen, and Jack Parr were ever together. And they did something with them. So now that was part of the bigger special. But
sure,
anyway,
yeah.
I think you're the current occupant of the office, so it's got to be up to you to set that up and host it.
Yeah, you have to. If it's your house, you can't just show up at a house you used to live in and say you want to throw a party. So it's definitely got to be. You're right. Thank you for your point. That's a very fair thing to point out.
Next summer when we talk, I'll ask you on the progress.
How it's going.
Because then it'll only be 6 months away. And
Yeah,
if it's not in the planning stages by then, it's not
right.
going to
And
happen.
let's hope too, when we have the conversation, we're in a weird hotel conference room and not talking via Zoom.
Let's hope that, and let's hope you're back in studio, because
We'll
otherwise
have some Danishes out.
it'll be the four of you getting.
What I see, we put some Danishes out. There'll be coffee earned for you. We're gonna
And
take
all of you, the three of you, can shave Dave's beard. That would be.
That sounds like a good idea. That's a good idea. We can get it. Two of us can hold him down.
This is always one of the highlights of my summers, and I'm so glad you joined me again this time.
It's always nice to see you, Chris. Thanks so much.